moving on to the other end of the spectrum, Formula E. I know this is something that you've been paying attention to, Scarbs, over the last couple of years, and we're all getting more and more excited about it now because of the quality of the drivers in Formula E. So as we look ahead to the upcoming Monaco E-Prix, we're going to be talking about drivers in 1 second, but can you just talk us through the car in general and what you like about the technology that's going on?
Well, obviously, I think that the key thing, I mean, I've been interested in Formula E since before the first season when it started, and I've followed it very closely from a technical point of view because, as you say, you've got this fantastic driver lineup, great city centre street racing, which is really entertaining, but then you've got this technical undercurrent as well, which is very much matching what road car manufacturers are doing. Now, if we have a look at the car, the one here is in the Renault livery, but all of the cars are effectively same from the outside. The chassis was developed by a company called Spark with Dallara, so it's got a lot of very standard parts, very familiar to people with the F3 cars and what have you. And what you have is from the nose all the way back to the roll hoop is a standard chassis. Everyone runs exactly the same chassis. They've got the usual setup variabilities, but they can't actually change any parts for parts of their own. And then what happens is, compared with a petrol engine car, becomes very different. Normally, after the roll hoop, you'd have a petrol tank, which is built into the monocoque.
Right.
Clearly, there's not one here. They haven't just modified an old car, so the chassis actually stops just after the roll hoop.
Right.
And then you have the large Williams battery, to which you then have the motor and the gearbox and everything.
So the Williams
attached.
battery is a standard.
Is a standard
well,
battery.
yeah.
Everyone has the same battery supply in the first 3 seasons, and again next year in season 4. Then it changes because the car and the battery and the powertrains will change for season 5. Big step for Formula E in that year. And then the rear suspension is all within the control of the teams as well as their powertrain. And then the rear aero, again, is very much fixed, as is the front of the car. So you can't change the parts, can't change the weight, can't change the shapes.
Really showing my ignorance here, but if you've got the fixed battery, what then constitutes the powertrain as such?
So the powertrain is basically from the battery, you have the power outlet, and that will deliver you your sort of 200 or 180 kilowatts. And that's where the FIA measure it. Then everything from there out to the drive shafts is the team's powertrain. So that is the motor, potentially any gearbox that you may or may not be running. There's always some gears in there, the differential, drive shafts, rear suspension. And the most important thing is the electronics that takes the power from the battery and puts it into the electric motor, what we tend to call the inverter, but there's obviously lots of other things. In Formula 1 it's called control electronics. And the more efficient you can make that conversion of the power that the battery gives you all the way out to the rear wheels means you actually get more performance. So as much as they're capped by the power output, the more efficient you get, the less losses you get through that process, and Renault are probably one of the best teams in doing this. You get more performance at the wheels. So this is the challenge for the things, improving the efficiency. You can't make more power, but you can be more efficient to get that little bit of extra power.
And what sort of transmissions are they generally using?
Well, if we flick onto the next picture, you can actually see the powertrain in situ. So first of all, you've got the big carbon fibre box.
Just flicking onto the next picture, these are Craig Scarborough drawings. First time I think we've seen them on Motorsport TV. Very different in style, as we said long ago, to Giorgio Piola's, but this is classic Scarborough, right?
This is exactly the sort of not quite CAD drawings. These are actually still just drawings. They're not anything very clever in terms of 3D or anything. But
and you're unique in that you've done Formula E. I don't think too many other
there aren't other people covering things like Formula E and LMP1 and other categories on the technical side. So a little bit of exclusive on this one.
Brilliant.
So what you have is the Williams battery, big carbon fibre box, to give you a feel of the size of it. It's about the size of a shipping pallet. You know, those big wooden pallets at forklifts. It's about that size.
Wow.
Heavy, sort of coming up towards 300 kilos. This is where the Formula E car is unfortunately very heavy. But this was a battery designed in something of a rush to get the season up and running after one of the original tenders didn't come through. So Williams have done a fantastic job with their advanced engineering group to get this battery working. It's been upgraded again this year. It's been outwardly reliable. I think there's only been one race failure.
And what type of battery is it?
So inside here, this is a completely I mean, we call it the battery, but it's a battery within a battery. Right. So inside here, you've got lithium-ion cells, very much like mobile phone battery technology, but these are pouch cells. They're about an A4 silver pouch, and there's about 200 to 300 of them inside. individually cooled, individually managed by an internal battery management system. Very, very clever piece of technology here, but all you see is the carbon fibre box. Lots of safety things inside it. You've got the fire extinguisher inlets on the side, ways to isolate it. So safety is absolutely critical. It's been crash tested and everything. So this is what every team gets. And then you have a power outlet, the yellow blocks on the side. That goes into the inverter, which is the unit we see on the top. This is the Season 1 setup. So this is now McLaren hardware. And that takes the DC power from the battery, converts it into AC for the synchronous three-phase motor, permanent magnet motor, which sits inside the bell housing. And teams now are able to change all of these bits themselves. So some teams like to have a smaller motor that runs at very high RPM that needs a gearbox to increase the torque out to the rear wheels. Teams like the Renault team now have a very powerful motor that needs no gears. There's no gear shifting whatsoever. The Renault drivers, the old EDAMS run team, at the start, they just put their foot down, there's no clutch, there's no gears, and then they don't have to touch anything else until the end of the race, which is quite incredible. Is the benefit of an electric vehicle, is that you don't have to muck about with gears and clutches and things. Because these cars recover energy under braking, which is done through the rear wheels, much like KERS is in Formula One, the gearbox and the gears that have to go from the differential through to the motor, because the motor never actually directly connects to the wheels. Under braking probably has more torque going through the gearbox than it does when it's accelerating, because these are heavy cars. Okay. Regenerative braking means that you've got the reverse torque through the gearboxes. So this is actually great business for people like X-Track and Hewland and all the other sort of specialist companies that are now coming into this area. So this is the sort of thing that the teams are able to play about with. Now, after Season 1, this was all standard. Then the teams went on to their own powertrains, and if we flick on to the next picture, Season 3 now, the teams are getting very clever with their powertrains. So this is the Mahindra car, the M3 Electro. We've taken the battery out and we've made the gearbox see-through so we can see the change in packaging. Now everything is contained within a carbon fibre gearbox housing. And you have your electronic units, the inverters to take the power from the battery to the motor. The motor is mounted now transversely inside the transmission, and that drives through one, or in Mahindra's case, 2 gears out to the differential. Again, these rules still enforce a differential. That will change as the season, as the series develops over the coming years. And this basically means this, like, about 150 kilos of hardware at the back of the car, including the rear suspension, is all within the team's control. And this is what's starting to make the difference between the different teams and their performance. Obviously, the Renault team have been very good. The ABT team have been fantastic, particularly at the last race, and it should be interesting what Monaco brings for us. So they've all got their own different, slightly different performances and different ways of laying out these motors. So it's an area where we're all having to relearn all of our engineering basics, from petrol engine cars to the electric powertrain.